Thank you guys for having me on the show. I'm Elijah Manley. I ran for state representative in Florida, in South Florida, in our 94th House District, which consists of most of central Broward County. I ran that campaign as a 21-year-old progressive candidate against a longtime incumbent who never had a challenger for the seat before.
Yeah, how was it like how was the campaign like? What ended up happening? Like what were your experiences like?
It was an interesting campaign. I was obviously a progressive candidate, whereas my opposition, Representative DeBose, was a more moderate Democrat who was been in the seat for several years. Before that, he was a city commissioner. It was a different type of campaign this year because of coronavirus and the pandemic's effect on fundraising, effect on just about anything. We ended up falling short by a couple thousand votes in the race, unfortunately. Um, I don't fault myself or my campaign for that. I think it was a really a different time to run a political campaign in this country, and it was really difficult this year. So we
Yeah,
just had to adapt with the tools we had and kind of go from there.
that makes sense. Do you think it would have been different had it been like on like not the year of COVID? Like what different campaign strategy would you have used if it wasn't virtual?
Absolutely, I think it would have been a lot better. We would have had more opportunities to knock doors, to have events, rallies, town halls, in-person town halls. We kind of had to go completely virtual for the most part, and most of the voters in our district, most people who vote, the super voters here, are older voters who may not be technologically astute. So we kind of had to focus our efforts on reaching the people who use Facebook, running ads. To target people on Facebook, on Instagram, target young voters. I think if we did not see a global pandemic this year, we would have been able to do so much more. We would have been able to reach so many more voters, and we would have been able to raise a lot more money as well.
Hmm.
As we know, campaign finance is incredibly important, especially for progressive candidates who do not rely on money from corporations or super PACs. It was incredibly difficult. Most people were out of work. They could not afford to donate more than maybe $5 or $10 to the campaign. So that kind of had a big effect on us. Whereas our only tools were literally playing their game of sending mail and virtual campaigning, which no one really had any idea how to do going into this.
Hmm. What do you think were like the main issues that you focused on throughout your campaign?
I focused on infrastructure, which was incredibly important in our district. You all might have heard maybe on national or international news about Fort Lauderdale and our major water crisis, our water main breaks. So I focused on stuff like that, talking about how we could have sustainable development because we have a lot of high rises going up and not a lot of money going into fixing our underground water mains, ensuring that our infrastructure is up to par. But I also talked about climate change, which a lot of people didn't think had a lot to do with our district, but it really did, because climate change is just sea level rising, which is important for South Florida. It's also everything. It's how we develop housing to who gets hit the worst by hurricanes every hurricane season. So I spoke a lot about that, including environmental policy, water quality. Water quality is incredibly important because South Florida, we receive our 8 million people receive our uh, water supply from the Biscayne Aquifer, which is threatened by fracking, by sea level rise, and saltwater intrusion. Everglades restoration, I focused on. But outside of those issues, I tried to tackle the issues that affected people the most this year, from healthcare, which was big. A lot of people's healthcare was tied to their employment. And a lot of people don't have healthcare anymore because they're not employed. But we also talked about the unemployment system in Florida, which we all know is incredibly, incredibly negligent and not functional. So I tied all of those issues into a central theme in the campaign that the government is not working for everyone, and that everyday people in our country and in our district, specifically here in South Florida, are hurting, and the government's nowhere to be found. The government's too busy bailing out rich people and airlines than they are focusing on getting people the tools that they need.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually from Florida myself, so it was really great to see this campaign like unfold because there really aren't a lot of young or progressive candidates in most of the Democratic districts. Um, So I was curious, what do you think are the main differences between you and like between being a progressive candidate and being and like the moderate candidates that normally end up winning races in Florida?
I think the biggest was definitely that I'm a young person, and that's not normal to see in politics, to see someone 21 running for public office.
Hmm.
But outside of just being young, I think my politics was definitely different than a lot of the more mainstream Democrats. My focus was primarily on helping working class people. It wasn't in the game of climbing up the political ladder or, dealing with political consultants or that entire machine politics mindset. It was more of a focus on helping everyday people. So I think that was the big difference between me and most other people who were running for office during that time. I was incredibly young and enthusiastic. I think I hope so. I tried to
Hmm.
be at the very minimum. Um, but I think the other obvious major difference was fundraising. We did manage to raise nearly $60,000, but almost all of it was from small dollar donors, people who gave $5 or $10. We had no corporations or super PACs give us money. It was all a grassroots campaign, and one of the most grassroots campaigns for just about anyone. I think most people running this cycle did not get that many individual donors.
Yeah, that's very true. Talking about campaign finances, I'm actually not really well versed within it. I never really think about it when it comes to like campaigns. I did an internship with the ACLU, so like I was tracking different campaign finances this summer for like the primaries in Florida. But what ends up like what do you pay money for when you're in a campaign?
A campaign is like a business in many ways. Is
Mhm.
you got to hire people, you got to sign contracts with firms to do specific things for the campaign, and it's a lot of advertising. We poured a lot of money into social media advertising. We poured a lot of money into mailers, sending mail to people, which is one of the most effective ways of reaching people. I kind of think otherwise, though. We poured money into phone banking software to reach people. A lot of virtual stuff too. I mean, I think one of the biggest campaign expenditures this year for politics was Zoom. Like literally, we were able to pay for Zoom so you could hold virtual town halls. You spend money on a lot of things: transportation for volunteers, food for poll workers. Um, it's like a business. You got to keep it going. You got to keep it flowing. And you end up spending a lot of money on those things. But this year it was a little different because traditionally you would spend money on other get out the vote measures, and our money was specifically spent on as much virtual stuff as we could um, to kind of reach people.
Mhm. I suppose like going off into a different stream, when did you end up deciding to run for rep?
It was late last year. 2019. I did not want to run for anything, to be honest. At that time, I just
Mhm.
wanted to relax. I was getting ready to turn 21, so it was going to be to me a big party year. Figure out what I was going to do. Maybe go away for school and try to enjoy the college experience. Transfer to a state university or something. I just kind of was just going at the moment, and um, I just, as I looked around, I just saw like just really disturbing stuff from student homelessness to infrastructure failings, just to a lot of issues. And I asked myself, what could I do? What can I actually do to address this? And I was going to run for the school board again, because I ran for school board in 2018, actually. So I was going to run for school board again. And then I was like, I'm tired. I just want to like be 21, 2021, go party, go to the club, just relax. And then I just tried to, I tried to address a homelessness issue down here. And when I tried to do that, it didn't seem like anyone really cared, like any of the politicians cared about anything I was saying. So I asked myself, what could I do? So I started, joking around with the incumbent, just saying, I'm gonna run for your seat. I'm gonna run for your seat. But it was a joke at the time. I didn't think I actually was going to. And he just didn't respond. He was just like, okay, and just really didn't respond. So I said, you know what? Forget it. Okay, then I'll actually run. I was going to run for a different district, but then I ended up running for this district. And there are a lot of people who, you know, ahead of that, I thought to myself, maybe this isn't the right move. Maybe just finish college, maybe come back stronger with your degree, with more accolades. the experience, all of that stuff, go enjoy life a little bit. And then I just remember what my mentor said. I had a mentor who passed away in 2018, right before I finished the school board race. And she told me to make a promise that I would run in 2020 for something, most likely school board. I didn't really want to be honest, but I thought about that at the time, and I said, what would she want me to do? Um, and I decided to run. The most that can happen is you lose, which ended up happening, unfortunately. But uh, I think it was important for my voice to be on the ballot that year. I mean, especially with everything we're seeing this year, from the riots to the unrest to the racial tensions in this country. I think it was important to have a voice like mine, young, queer person of color, on the ballot talking about the issues that really matter in this country, and to our state, which is definitely no angel when it comes to uh, racial tensions. So I think it was incredibly important, win or lose, that I had my voice out there at least.